Thank you. Well, good morning. And you might wonder what exactly is a person who's not in the academic department going to tell you about research integrity. And hopefully after the session today, you'll understand the critical role that the library plays as well in this scholarly ecosystem. So I'm talking about navigating the complexities of questionable publishing practices. And I'm sure you are quite aware of some of these practices already. Great. So let's take a glimpse at what science looks like today. And you can see on your screen, there's already a number of challenges that's popping up. Saudi University Dean has 20 retractions in 2 years. Exclusive Elsevier to retract paper by economist. Citation cartels, etc. The list goes on. Next screen, a credibility crisis in science. Reproducibility crisis in science. And in fact, from my perspective, academic science is really in a massive crisis. And I don't think we fully appreciate the extent to which we are conducting research in an environment that has been absolutely polluted at so many levels already and infiltrated by cartels, criminal organizations. Some of these are legit. I'm not going to say any of the publishers' names. Some are definitely not, sorry, they're definitely questionable. I just want to start off by as academics, when I ask a question, well, how do you spot bad science? How easy is it to spot bad science? We have mechanisms in place, including checklists that you can work through to say, well, this might be predatory, this is questionable, etc. But I'm just going to show you one example. And this is, this journal is called Optical and Quantum Electronics. Published by Springer, Nature. They're a COPE member. COPE is the Committee on Publishing Ethics. They've been publishing since this journal started in 1969. It's indexed in BFI, compendic source by Elsevier, South African Department of Higher Education, DED, ERA, PubMed, Scopus, UCG, which is the Indian version of India's version of our DHET environment, and Web of Science. If you look at citation factors, the journal impact factor, for instance, 3.3, which is respectable. 10 is phenomenal. 3 is good. 1 is actually quite nice already. 5-year citation rate, downloads, 589,000, etc. When you look at this, you immediately think, but this is a good, reputable journal, right? Wrong. Next slide. Springer Nature Journal retracted over 200 papers since September. This is last year. This high-impact journal with more than 200 retractions already. This puts the academic question, or brings forth the academic question in terms of how do you trust your sources? How do you navigate this incredible environment where some of the science is quite easy to spot as being questionable, others are not? And this morning, we already had a glimpse of the various portfolios of the academic research environment. Your doctorate degree or doctorate student, for instance, or your emerging scientists, your established scientists, etc. And you're all facing the same problem, but it's more, well, let me rather say it's worse for emerging scientists, where they do not know exactly, having 30 or 40 years of experience in a discipline. Right. So in the scholarly ecosystem, this is what you hope to achieve. Balance between your stakeholders, the opportunities that it renders, your community, the toolboxes that you have, including, for instance, environment, the software, the services, etc., the return on investment stemming from research, and all of this aimed at the meaningful transformation of your community and your environment in which you function. However, there's one factor that permeates everything that human touches. That is human behavior. It doesn't matter what you put in place. Human behavior will dictate certain things, outcomes. And we were taught as youngsters, there's 3 reasons why people do things. The 3 G's. Girls, gold, or glory, which is a very sexist phrase from when I was young. Now it would be love, money, or ego. right? Or reputation. Those are the three things, drivers for most people. Right, let's take a look at academic integrity. And I'm going to glimpse over this because I think as researchers, you're all acutely aware of this. It's really taking responsibility of your own work. It's accurately conducting and reporting your research outcomes. It's avoiding information behaviors that lead to information bias. Everything that we already mentioned this morning. But you have to understand that your reputation and the reputation of this institution and of the quality of this country's research output is actually hinging on these factors that you have to consider as part of what is academic integrity. There's some critical questions. What is your reputation worth to you as a scholar? 14 Nobel Prize winners have retracted science materials. 14. One of them went from Nobel to Ig Nobel Award. I don't even know that award. That's like opposite of the Nobel prizes. We also have to ask, what's this institution's reputation worth? And we heard this morning at the BBC how valuable our reputation is. It's our brand, right? As a publisher or editor, I see some of them here at least, what is your reputation worth? Of course, you'll be associated with research output, especially if you're an editor or a publishing environment. Who is responsible for reputational risk management? And in fact, this morning already through the DVC's keynote address, you picked up, we are all involved actually in this, in reputational risk management from different aspects that we are busy with, like libraries will work on certain things, etc. And how do we support scholarly rigor as researchers and as support units? Right, so the question is, just need to find this button, what is questionable versus legitimate science? Questionable science. And please note, I do not use any terms to say it's either black or white in terms of this bad science and good science. It's a continuum, and it's very difficult to actually establish exactly where on this continuum certain outputs lie. Questionable science do not adhere to best practices. It actually invalidates science due to unethical behaviors in research. There's a number of types of research, questionable science. Articles published in predatory journals, for instance. The article might have been valid, but the publishing process invalidated the research output. Works emanating from paper mills, that is our biggest concern. Having citation cartels, paper mills. Retracted research, and I will get to more about the retracted research just now. Bad science, weak or low quality science, fake science, falsified science, and other things, including a question about ethical behaviors and the lack of a research data management plan as indicating, as an indicator of unethical behavior actually. Without, because you have to remember the three things like, can you replicate it, is it valid, etc. And without that research data management plan, can somebody actually redo your research and come to the same conclusion? Right. So let's go to the legitimate science or the good science. Adheres to the best practices at the researcher level, at the institutional level, especially when it comes to ethical clearance. And I know a lot of our partners across the continent, unfortunately, do not have these ethical clearance processes in place. At the publisher level, at the editorial process level, and at the dissemination level. All of these are critical avenues or aspects of the scholarly practice that we have to focus on. And you can see yourself in this continuum. This is a continuum I spoke about where there's no clear cut as to what's bad or what's good. But a lot of it has to do with journal vetting and reputational risk and reputation management within a publishing process. Information behaviors. We spoke about data bias this morning. And one of the first things is, please, and we see this all over, read beyond the requisite materials, because that's the only way you're going to ever actually understand a discipline more completely and be able to make an informed decision whether this is actually wrong or right. And we don't see this in terms of, at least at the undergrad level, we don't see this very much. We see students very much focused on, I've got to read this paragraph, nothing else. Read behind the first page of materials, contemplate the different approaches and arguments. There's other aspects to citation behaviors and scholarly integrity, plagiarism and copyright infringement. I'm not going to focus on this. Citation integrity, just to say that citations, that's the new academic currency. And I'm going to let that sink in for a moment. Right. So what does a citation represent? In fact, why do you cite something? Is it negating your study, or is it adding value to your study? Does it benefit? Why do you cite? Is it because you have to put citations in your essay, or you have to put citations in your thesis, etc.? That's what happens, unfortunately, mostly. It doesn't really, from what we can pick up, it doesn't necessarily mean that you've actually read any of those materials. What we find in terms of information behaviors is that more and more people will find citations or materials to cite to fit what they already know, what they already understand, instead of being informed and changed by what they read and then citing those materials, which is a great area of concern. Scholarly due diligence, again, we spoke about this: accuracy, reliability, validity of sources. Scholarly integrity is under risk. I already mentioned this, false, etc. So how do we address this? Well, one of the things is try to stick to library discipline endorsed or discipline endorsed resources. However, there's also a caveat to this, which I'll tell you about now. And watch out for areas of concern. Are you citing material that's been retracted? I'm not talking about where you're publishing. I'm talking about what materials do you use to shape your thinking? Quite often we see those are retracted or possibly retracted materials. They've been removed for some valid reason. Should it then inform your decision? And there's aspects to this. It can either inform your argument in terms of adding value amongst a group of legitimate other articles that you're citing, or like we found, I think last year, where the whole theoretical framework that was used came from an article in a peer-reviewed journal, hence invalidating that complete study in 2 years' time of a researcher. Are you citing bad science? Retraction watch mass resignations list. There's a lot of activity in the publishing arena. Please watch Retraction Watch. Oh, that sounds odd, but please read Retraction Watch. Watch it closely. I don't know how to word this, but they will give you a lot of indicators in terms of they're like a watchdog in the publishing industry. They've got many things, including editorial boards leaving journals because of publishers requesting certain things from them, which they do not agree with. Papers and peer reviews with evidence of ChatGPT writing, Neil. Retraction Watch. Right, so in academic libraries, what do? We try to provide you with the collections that we deem to be the best in its field or endorsed by the people that we engage with, the faculty, the departments, etc. So please try to stick to these collections or resources. They've been endorsed through a number of processes. However, we also have other tools. So please, if we do come with a budget for library tools, you'll now see why some of these are so expensive. So one of the things on top, you will see the line, as you would see in Google Scholar, where somebody searches for something, but on the right, you've got two options. You've got a PDF and you've got a library, a full text at RU Library link. Most people will go straight to the PDF, click it, go through the PDF, cite it. I mean, that's human behavior. That's a shortcut approach. However, if you were to click on a full text in this case, immediately our integrated systems would pick up this article has been retracted and it'll provide you with the reason why it's retracted. You can still make an informed decision whether you want to include it in your study or not, but the onus is on you to continue with this due diligence process. We just provide the means for you we just provide you with the data, you have to interpret data in that way. So please stick to the mechanisms in the library, as these will guide you with regards to some of the resources. What you see in front of you is most probably one of the ugliest design interfaces I've ever seen, yet it's one of the most valuable. This is Retraction Watch, where you can search for any journal or publisher, and you'll find information that is retracted there. And you will notice, if you go through Retraction Watch, Nature, Lancet, British Medical Journal, or BMJ, etc., they're all listed there. There's also a lot of predatory journal publishers out there as well. Even the citation tools. So if for those of you who use our citation tools, on the bottom right, this is a screenshot from a piece of RefWorks, where it's integrated, and you'll see there's a little blue thing that says road services. Use this. Use the citation tools. It's integrated with the mechanism to tell you whether this source has been flagged as being questionable when it comes to certain scientific rigor processes. As librarians, how do we support the publishing initiatives within the institution? Is the library involved? Quality of metadata on publishing platforms is also concerned. And I have a list, there's the next 3 slides, all look at it from a published perspective as well. So I've looked at it from an academic perspective, from a library perspective, and again, now from a published perspective. I'm not going to go through this, it's quite lengthy, but as a publisher or as an editor, I want you to understand there's also a role to play because your reputation is actually also online. And unfortunately, there's a lot of activities that creates questionable, a lot of questionable practices. So I'm just going to skip those 3. But what's most important, academics, researchers, please triple check references. As human error is evident and impacts on the increase of citation pollution, which in fact just adds, it builds to this. There's also an inability or a difficulty in assessing the impact of articles if certain processes are not followed. The inability or difficulty to cross-link between disparate systems like we have now. We've got discovery mechanisms and you also have rating mechanisms coming in place. Include persistence identifiers in all references. I really don't care much for, whether you use ALA or whatever kind of citation format, but the one thing I beg of you is let me rephrase. I beg you, whether the format says do not include URLs, please include the URLs. They are critical in an environment where we have systems that pick up across the world, that there might be errors, there might be challenges, and it can point you to the actual object, as opposed to a hijacked journal or a hijacked article or something like that as well. And the best of all, scholarly due diligence, which is another topic on its own. I think this adds to it, but there's more aspects to it. Sorry, this has been a lot in a very small period of time. I was limited in time. I wanted an hour. They didn't want to give me an hour because I would have gone in more detail. But I just want to, again, urge you to consider the various mechanisms that the library has at your disposal. Also the librarians themselves. If you're unsure, we've seen this, we've had this. Yesterday or the day before, a very senior lecturer would say something, I'm unsure, can I trust this resource or not? We're there to help. Use your faculty teams. Let them go through your references. Yeah. Anyway, there's a lot we can do when it comes to research integrity. Let's ensure that this institution's reputation is not put at stake through bad research practices. And we're all involved in this process. Thank you.
Question? Yes. What's the difference between fake science? Thank you. What's the difference between fake science and falsified science?
Falsified science, the way I understand it, fake science is immediately, there's no question about its validity. Falsified science is where you use legitimate data sets often, but you interpret it for different reasons, etc. And you manipulate the data. So it's not completely false. It's just bad use of the data itself and tweaking of the data to fit your purpose. Yes.
Thank you, Bennett. My name is Tumeka. I'm from the research office. So I'm asking this, listening to you now, I'm just thinking maybe if we had a way working together between myself and the library to get to understand or use tools to identify these journals that are questionable, because sometimes we get researchers asking us, can I trust this journal? So the first thing that I will do if I'm asked that question is to look if it's accredited on the DHET list. That's the obvious part, because for me, it's about the institution getting subsidy. But having responded to that, there are other things that I'm thinking that there's been talks that this journal is not trusted. So how do I respond to that second question? I've verified that it's DHET accredited, but now there's a question of the practice within that journal that is accredited.
Yes. Thank you. That's also a multi-tiered question, actually. First of all, there's a lot of science out there that's not been identified as being questionable. There's a lot we don't know about that. I think the more, as researchers, we do post-publication review of articles, that you feed that information back to the publishers, and also like retraction watch, that they know that as the peers, they will listen to your voice and you can have input. Now, the problem is there's no straight yes or no when it comes to assessing. And we know that Web of Science, Scopus, etc., there's also journals in there that are questionable, that's indexed in the most reputable indices possible. There's a number of factors you have to consider, and we have a rubric that you can work through. Speak to Debbie as well on this. So that rubric will guide you, and the more questions you ask relating to the source, the better. But having it indexed and whether it's deemed accredited, unfortunately, is not a yes or no, or in terms of whether it's good or bad. There's a lot of practices, and it constantly changes. What might have been good a year ago might be bad today. So it's awareness that you also have to consider. There's paper mills is now, unfortunately, one of the biggest things. Let me just also point out something. One of the biggest challenges when it comes to citation behaviors and scholarly integrity is actually the incentivizing of research. As long as you incentivize research, you can have a quality problem. I think we are at Rhodes, we are much better off because I don't think there's an individual researcher incentive, which is good on the one hand because it limits some of the questionable practice that takes place. However, on the other side is also you have transformative agreements, for instance, that now place an emphasis on you having to pay upfront to publish, which you might not have costs, you might not have the funds. It's a tricky environment. It's constantly changing. And I think this conversation, like you said, speaking with the library and having us help you, or having, also from your side, getting information from what you need from us, will greatly will put us in a better place to actually assist you correctly. Because I think it's everybody's problem, and we have to help each other.
There is a question, an online question from Prof. Sue McKenna. Don't you think that part of the problem is that the journals are themselves a big business? The days of journals being owned and managed by universities and research organizations has all but gone, though perhaps now making a comeback.
Yes, I completely agree with Prof. McKenna on this. I think as long as, and that's why I mentioned the human behavior, the 3 Gs. Where there's money to be made, somebody will make it. And if they can find a way to exploit it, even better. And we see it in the scholarly ecosystem, where the big publishers are problematic. However, the big publishers also render a sense of trust in many ways. I mean, I've got great respect for some of the Elsevier editorial boards, for instance, and it adds value to your assessment. So again, it's tricky. However, it's Open Access Week, and one of the things that we want to see going forward is a constant conversation about ensuring that you can make your research available freely to all, to your communities, however, without ever negating the scientific rigor that went into this. And I think that's important, to find a balance between the two, with open science and the research excellence as a way forward.